welcome back. We'll now switch gears, but before we switch gears to other conversation where we've been tracking all the happenings in the country as far as this NLC protest and civil society organization is concerned. We've touched base with Benue, we've touched base with Port Harcourt in Rivers State, as well as other places like Lagos. But now, going on now in the nation's capital, Abuja, members of the NLC and civil society allies gearing up. Those are the pictures you're seeing. That's coming from the nation's capital. Quite a number of protesters have begun to arrive, taking up maybe flags and inscriptions and all of that, where the protest is scheduled to take place at the NLC Secretariat. The protesters are expected to leave here at the Secretariat, from here at the Secretariat down to the National Assembly, where the leadership of the NLC will submit its letter to the government. So that's exactly what's happening in the nation's capital, Abuja, as far as this protest is concerned. Let's remind you what this is all about. The hardship, high cost of living, and 2023 agreement between Labour and the government. They're saying it has not been fulfilled. Government is saying 80% has been fulfilled. And they say if by the end of tomorrow nothing actionable is done, then the nation should be ready and be prepared for an indefinite strike action by organized labor, although the TUC has pulled out of this protest. Back here in our studios, of course, at the beginning of the program, if you're with us, we talked about that very famous Agege bread. Agege bread is still famous, by the way. And a gentleman who has done Nigeria proud by not just keeping it in country, is now taking it outside our shores to far away. And is joining us, Wale Rabiu, an entrepreneur and director of Grey Madlock Bakery. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Yeah, thank you, Fred.
Well, so some people are wondering, how did Agege bread board the plane and find its way outside the shores? What motivated you?
Wow, I've answered that question several times. And again, let me thank you again for bringing me on the show. Agege bread was not even meant to cross the border or go to the airport and get to Canada. But we were sure about one thing when we were leaving the shore of Nigeria, that we're going to take advantage of any business opportunity. We left the country in 2016, and we've been in business before leaving. You know, we've been into farming, diesel distribution, despite our corporate work, myself and my wife. So, but we set out to take advantage of any business opportunity as soon as we arrived. And we got to Canada, we saw the opportunity. Ontario is like a Lagos of Canada, where everybody converge, everybody of every ethnic nationalities, wherever they are, from all over the world. So you can imagine a Nigerian community started growing, and there was no one single Nigerian bakery. So the closest to bread for us then was eating bread baked by the Ghanaian bakeries. So we saw that gap, and we took advantage of that.
So for you, the primary market is the Nigerian citizens or Nigerians resident in Canada?
That is where we started from.
Okay.
We needed to get a very good, solid base for the product, for our business. So we targeted the Nigerian community, the African community, but eventually we moved out to other ethnic nationalities.
So it was a deliberate approach at venturing into the business, or you just saw a gap that you wanted to fill?
Okay, like I said, we've always wanted to do business in Canada, but of course, I spent about 14 years of my life in the telecom in Nigeria. So getting to Canada, it was easy to get another telecom role. So I was with Rogers, I was working. Then we saw the gap. Because we had this mindset of taking business opportunity, we saw the gap and we went into it.
So what goes into the baking of this Agege bread? Is it the same recipe that we have back home for Agege bread that goes into the one that you bake in Canada?
It's actually the same thing. Nothing has changed. We probably want to think of, okay, maybe the margarine in Nigeria might not taste like the one in Canada. It's still the same thing. Flour is flour all over the world, you know, it's still the same Agege bread. And that's, I think, the niche that we created that made us, special in Canada, because people have been eating bread all over the world. Bread was broken in the Bible, So there's nothing new about bread. But the fact is, we decided to make bread the same exact way bread is eaten in Nigeria, and that's what we presented to the world in Canada.
You know, bread is so important that it's even in a prayer. Give us this day our daily bread. Just to show how important it is, and we're seeing the process. It's quite interesting we're having this conversation in the context of the economic reality in Nigeria. We're seeing protests across the board, and the slogan is end hunger. Right. That's the slogan for the protest. And we know how bread is important, how important bread is. We've seen bread causing protests in a lot of climes, but it's quite interesting to see how you are taking that commodity and you are feeding 5,000 or more. There's no fish with yours. But speak to this. You said you've also been involved in agriculture. Now you are essentially still involved in feeding. Do we have a reason really to be hungry in Nigeria?
The answer is no. I think simple and straight, no. And one of the things that hurts me more than any other thing is the fact that with the level of arable land across the country, we still have not been able to achieve food security or self-sufficiency in food production. Simply put, we can't feed ourselves. That is so painful for me. And maybe bread is just a way of starting it. And as a matter of fact, one of the things that we have decided to go into coming back to Nigeria is famine, food famine. I think it's something that is difficult for some of us to sink in, that we have all of this arable land and people are still crying of hunger, you know. And this doesn't necessarily mean government should do the farming alone, but individuals should get into farming.
I'm seeing that, I'm looking at the process. So for the benefit of those of us who don't know how this is done, maybe you can walk us through this process, because I've seen them make Agege bread in Yaba. Sorry, Yaba people, I have to mention, because that's where I eat a lot of Agege bread. I don't think I saw it like this. I saw, the literal, is it over now? They're doing it, pulling it with that plank and bringing it on the ground and all of that. But is it because of the climb you're in, or this is how it should be made? Does it even compromise? Does it still retain that Agege-ness? Forgive me. With Africa, we have this thing that if it's not pounded with hand, it loses the fidelity and integrity.
I understand what you're talking about. But the fact is, we actually did not start this way. We just needed to upgrade and automate our process. So what you're seeing now is a bread line. And this is the best you can get in any mechanized or automated bakery setting, So it's a line. Probably what bigger bakeries will have now will be maybe several of these lines, but this is a complete bread line, So it's still the same. It's still the same. The end product is the same thing. It's still Agege bread, but instead of the way we do it here, and that's how we actually started in Canada too. We started by having all of this equipment in silos, but what we have been able to achieve is a complete bread line. But the bread tastes the same thing, doesn't take anything away from the sweetness, the richness of our Agege bread.
The slimy, how slimy.
The stretchy, the chewy.
Okay, stretchy, not slimy.
Fluffy,
that's the real
soft
word.
I think that's what we've been able to...
And dissolves well with ewa going.
Yes, correct. And that's what we've been able to sell to the world out there, that you can eat bread in a special way. Even one thing we realized that even bread eaters, people that have been eating bread for years, they taste Agege bread and they were surprised. Wow, bread can be this yummy. I tell people to describe it as being yummy and not sweet, because it's not as if Agege bread is extra sweet with sugar. It's just that it's yummy. The process of baking it makes it different from every other bread.
Speaking of which, what's the reception like, not just for Nigerians now, because you are in a multiracial community, but also across the nationalities that reside in Canada?
Okay, the beauty of Canada is, like you said, is a multiracial. We have people from all over the world. But in terms of reception, we started our business in a city called Brampton, and Brampton has almost every ethnic nationality. So it was easy for our product to be received very well. So we we were able to sell to a representative of every country or representative of every continent across Canada. So it was easy for us to move even beyond our community, that is the African Caribbean community, into other ethnic nationalities. We have the Indians, we have the Chinese, we have the Asians, we have even the original Canadians dropping their bread for our bread. And that's why we don't take the bread outside of over 300 African Caribbean stores. We now have our bread in the big box stores. So we signed a deal with Loblaws. Loblaws is the biggest grocery chain in Canada, retail chain in Canada, and they have stores like No Frills, Rick Canadian Superstores, Profigo. We have.
I said they don't charge us for commercial.
Oh, okay then. Okay. So, just to let you know how we've been able to take the bread out of Agege to every tables in Canada.
Fantastic, and it's phenomenal. And I'd like us to link this to our current situation. Because again, we're speaking in the current context, and a lot of people watching, yes, they love the bread. They probably want to taste the bread. But by the way, did you bring bread? You talked about how you always bring bread back home, and that's very interesting.
There's no way I'll come to Nigeria without bringing bread.
So you bring Agege bread back.
Definitely.
Lovely. So just talk to us about how, what the differences are, because we see people still, well, I say producing or baking Agege bread in Nigeria, that's still at that same level, the same process which Jeffrey described is what they're doing till date. But you've been able to scale up there. So is it a thing with the climb, with the government, the economic realities,
or regulations,
such that we can maybe replicate? As you said, you don't have a reason to be hungry in Nigeria. No. So maybe we can begin to compare notes. We have the ideas, we have the flavor, the taste. Maybe let's borrow some processes and make this work right here in Nigeria with food and other businesses.
Well, as you can see from the video we're playing, these are Nigerians baking the bread. They're not, of course, we have every other ethnic nationalities working for us. We have the Canadians, we have the Indians, we have the Jamaicans. We even have our brother Ghanaians working in the bakery.
So Nigeria bread has one Ghana bread.
Yes, we've taken a lot.
Go ahead.
Eventually.
That's the war you want to start.
So, but the beauty of it is wherever we have it can be replicated. And I believe there might probably be one or two bakeries doing this in Nigeria too, because these are just basic. In the context of bakery, bread baking, these are basic, although best world-class equipment, but they can be produced they can be used and in baking bread in Nigeria.
Government support that you had that was different there, or what exactly is different?
Okay. I try not to go into some of this conversation, but I'll just tell you, the basic thing is the enabling environment, I would say. Then the financial institutions are willing to support small businesses. We can't overemphasize the importance of small businesses in our economy, whether it is in Canada, in Nigeria. And I think that is the area where we need to focus in Nigeria. Small businesses, so that we can.
I think you've hit it on the head, the nail on the head exactly, which has to do with a lot of support. And we hope that the government, there are efforts in that direction. The question is always whether it can move the needle because of the number of MSMEs we have across the country. There are loads of them looking for one form of support and being believed. First, they have to believe in them to invest in them. So we hope that the government will do the same, just like the environment you're coming from. Mr. Wale Rabiu is an entrepreneur and director of Grey Madlock Bakery, credited for exporting Agege bread from Nigeria to Canada, and maybe around the world. Thank you so much for coming.
Sure. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, guys, on that Agege bread note, we wrap up the program. I want to thank you for your time and, of course, your usual company. But before we go, I understand that before we go, we need to just touch base with Bauchi. We've been reaching out to all our correspondents to find out what's going on. Yes, so that's the picture from Bauchi just before we go. So you can see NLC Secretary there, security men being stationed right in front. I'm sure they are converging to get ready for their protest. Well, so far so good across all the places we've touched base with. This is Bauchi, Port Harcourt, Lagos, and Benue. We haven't had any incidents of violence and all of that, which is what a peaceful protest should be about. So that's Bauchi. You can see NSCDC as well as other security agencies standing by, I guess, to secure the people and help them have a peaceful protest. Well, That's it on the program. Thank you so much for your time and, of course, your usual company. I'm Jeffrey Uzongo. Some people are about to go get Agege bread right after they sign out. Well, we'll try and join them. Thank you for watching. Join us again tomorrow. I am Bukola Koka.
Well, thanks to Mr. Rabiu for that. And it's important to note that he's also shortlisted, so there's business here as well. So for Nigerians in diaspora, it's important to replicate whatever you're doing out there right here in Nigeria, because Nigeria can do with all of the help we can get. Thank you so much for watching. Stay with Channels Television for all the breaking news today, particularly with that protest and other issues. I'm Kayode Okikele. Goodbye.